go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of ASCII Anything, presented by Moser Consulting. I'm Marc Brickley. I'm a director of application development at Moser Consulting, and I'm going to be your guest host for today. I'm really happy to have you listening today as we talk about a common dilemma that happens with businesses and the clients that come to us. Your business has a major problem that is a priority to solve, and software seems to be the solution. But do you build custom software? Or do you buy existing software that is already available? That is the question. Joining myself in the discussion is Natalie Fischesser. Natalie is a director of application development with over 15 years of experience in tech. She started her career in a creative field, and that still influences how she leads and builds products today. She loves creative problem solving, collaborating with smart people. I think that was a shout out to me right there. And helping customers untangle complex challenges. I guarantee you this is going to be an entertaining episode, not just because Natalie is a fellow director of mine in app dev, but she's also someone I enjoy debating tech with. Hint, hint, this will not be the first time that has happened, right, Natalie?
Right.
You've had a long history in the consulting space helping clients with this exact problem. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Of course. I'm excited to talk about this today. I spend a lot of my time talking about the lab apps that we have built for other companies, but a good chunk of my time is actually spent working on the consulting side of the business. And the buy versus build question is one that has come up consistently over the years. Companies often realize they need software to solve a problem, but they need help determining what's the right solution. And sometimes they think they know they need to build, and they don't realize that there's products out there that might actually fill that gap. The great thing about working with consultants is we're often aware of new software as it emerges and can help inform you of your options. And I'd say over the last 15 years, the decision to buy or build software has become even more complicated as there's more options than ever for companies to choose from, but we're here to help you navigate that decision.
With that, Natalie, let's say a client does come to you and they're considering that build versus buy scenario. What are the types of things you want to know from them to help them with that decision?
The first thing we're going to want to understand is the problem they're trying to solve. Many challenges companies face aren't actually unique. We want to make sure we understand any market differentiators or if the company has any processes in place that require a unique workflow. We also want to understand why they're considering this change right now. Are their teams doing too much manual work? Are they growing and hitting limitations with their current tools? The why now helps us understand the urgency and whether or not the root issue is the technology they're using or is it something like their process. Another thing we consider is their appetite for long-term support. Custom software is generally not a one-time build and then you're done. Even if you're actively not adding new features, there's regular maintenance that needs to be considered. Ultimately, we don't want to push a client towards buying or building. We want to help them evaluate the trade-offs of each option and choose the option that best supports their business in both the near term and long term. All right, Mark, did I forget anything there?
So for me, I'm someone who always likes to look at the financial aspects. I'm definitely one of those numbers guys, and a lot of our clients are as well, because everything you do in business, it really comes down to money in the end. Maybe it's lowering your expenses. Sometimes it's generating more revenue, but there's always a financial motivation to this type of discussion. Those financial discussions usually start with something called opportunity cost. That is the how much more revenue can you make? It's the number of what's the expense can you actually save? For app dev projects, I usually like to know this as a monthly value because that's usually how our projects are. Like we estimate in certain numbers a month. So that's the unit of math that you want. Once you have that opportunity cost, then we can evaluate the different design solutions based on how much of that opportunity they can capture. One of the things that I like to do from a problem solving standpoint is ideate lots of different solutions because there might be 10 different solutions to that one problem you have. And we want to help you pick the one that's the best solution, not just the one we first thought of. So let's say one design can capture 30% of that opportunity cost, but another design solution can capture 50% of it. Okay. That factor there is going to give you something else called your cost of delay for implementing the solution. Again, I like to stay in months for my increments. It makes the math a little easier. And then for each solution, once you have that cost of delay, you can balance that against the estimated cost of implementing that design. That's going to give you your return on investment and payback period. Most executives I work with, if the ROI is less than a year, it's just a no-brainer to go off and do. Natalie, have you had that same experience?
Oh, absolutely. The stakeholders we deal with are usually the decision makers at their company. They don't want to waste time, so no-brainer decisions are an easy yes, decision made, and move on. And a year ROI definitely falls into that category.
Yeah, where it starts to get tricky is where the ROI is between 1 and 2 years. Then it's a discussion that needs that further analysis, and sometimes other factors need to be weighed in on that initiative to see if it's one that gets greenlit. Anything more than 2 years ROI is usually a hard sell unless there's other financial factors that come into play. One factor might be in that build or buy decision, is this really a small piece of a larger initiative? And it's really the value of the larger initiative that matters. Maybe it's something that's going to reduce the risk of the business that goes beyond the software itself, such as being competitive in the changing landscape of their business market. So now, thanks for letting me nerd out there a little bit on the financial piece. I'm definitely a numbers guy. So now that we have that info, it's decision time for the client. When considering build versus buy, when does it make sense to actually build the custom software?
Generally, I'd say custom software makes sense when the available products don't fit how your business actually works. If you're constantly forcing your process to adapt to the software and not the other way around, that's a pretty good sign. Another indicator is when a company has scaled to the point that small inefficiencies start adding up. Teams might be exporting data between systems, manually reconciling information, or bouncing between tools that don't integrate well. When these workarounds happen every day across a lot of employees, the cost adds up.
That scenario is actually one of our most common scenarios, isn't it? The company's growing and it's just tired of those manual workarounds.
It definitely is.
Yeah. And I have to add something else too. I'm pretty proud of my influence on Natalie. I can see how much she's talking with her hands. That's not something she usually does. So it's nice to know I've been such a positive influence in your career, Natalie.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
What other scenarios do we see that is an indicator to build a solution?
Well, we also see when companies are stitching together several off-the-shelf products that really don't play nice together. Each tool solves a part of the problem, but the overall system becomes overly complicated and brittle. Custom software can also make sense when a company's processes are truly unique and require specialized workflows. And then I'd say, lastly, if software is core to your company's value proposition, meaning it directly impacts how you compete or deliver to your customers, owning that experience can be a huge strategic advantage for you.
The strategic advantage is a scenario that I've encountered in my experience at Moser actually quite a bit. There's many companies in Indiana that provide services in industries like logistics and manufacturing and healthcare. And you might think one software solution should be good to service a whole industry, but it just isn't true because it comes down to your business strategy. One logistics provider might have a strategy that they're trying to serve as much of the market as they can. Maybe it's like 70% of that addressable market. But there could be another provider that's focusing on providing services to transport hazmat materials only. That niche provider might need software that satisfies just their business model in a way that gives them a strategic advantage over their competitors because they're not going to make their margins from volume. So they have to make their margins from being competitive against their market in that area. Natalie, we've described in detail about when it makes sense to build a custom solution. Now, I'd like to know, when is buying off the shelf the smarter choice?
Buying off the shelf usually makes sense when the problem you're solving isn't particularly unique. Things like billing, HR systems, CRM, or project management are challenges thousands of companies have faced before. If there's a product out there that solves 80 to 90% of your needs, it's often the smarter choice rather than starting from scratch.
So that statement right there that you just made is very near and dear to my heart. A lot of companies waste money trying to get that last 10 or 20% of an opportunity closed when that money really would have been better spent on a different initiative in the company. Maybe it's some other piece of software or tooling that their business really needs. Sometimes that 80% solution really is good enough.
It's also a good choice when software isn't part of your company's core value prop. An example of this is if you're a medical device company, accounting software is important to run your business, but it's not what differentiates you in the market. In those cases, it's better to rely on tools that already exist and have a proven track record. Another sign to buy is when a product simply fits well into your business with minimal workarounds. If you're not sacrificing too much functionality by buying, the speed, lower maintenance, and support can be a huge advantage.
There's a perception that many people have that off-the-shelf software is always cheaper. Is that true?
Not always. Some off-the-shelf products come with significant cost, and when you multiply that by the number of users and the years you plan to use it, these costs can really add up. You also want to consider the hidden cost. Some products have additional charges for things like integrations, upcharges for certain features, or customizations. You should think about the human side of things too, and how much time it will take to admin or manage these tools by your employees. And then on the flip side, you might be surprised how quickly and cost effective custom software can be built. Modern development frameworks, AI assisted development tools have significantly sped up how teams build software. Tasks that used to take months can now sometimes be done in weeks. So the cost isn't always straightforward as buy is cheaper, build is expensive. It really depends on the long term needs of your business and how the software will be used over time. So, Mark, we've made it sound like we're living in a buy or build world, but have a feeling you're about to tell us it's not quite that simple. What else should people be thinking about?
So I would absolutely say there are options beyond just build or buy. We live in a society where people look at so many decisions as one polar opposite or the other. And the reality is there's often a lot of middle ground. In many of the cases, the right solution for a client is really something more of a hybrid solution. So I'm going to give you two examples of what those are to kind of help out. So one of them, you use custom off-the-shelf solutions for many pieces of your business, but they just don't work well together. You can bring in custom software to serve as an integrator between those applications. Moving data, translating data, perhaps you kick off some automated event based on some action that's happened in your system, and it makes your business more automated and more efficient. In this case, the ability for your custom app to serve as an integrator is going to be dependent on your off-the-shelf apps having public APIs that can be utilized. A second scenario is when you have multiple commercial off-the-shelf applications, and what they do is they house pieces of the data or maybe house pieces of your process. And what you need is to bring all of that information together in a way that gives you a holistic view of your company and not just some fractured view. The custom app can be a unifier on your system. So I'll give you an example. I like to tell stories. That's just kind of what I do. Let's say you want to know the true cost of manufacturing your product. Let's just say it's an RV. Okay. You need to get the pay data of your employees from an HR system to know how much you're paying them because each employee could be a little different. You need to get the manual labor hours from a time tracking system to know how long it took for them to build it. But then the parts also cost money, and you're going to need to get the cost of those parts from an inventory management system. And then what parts you actually need to build this RV compared to that one, you might have to bring that information in from an engineering design library. A custom app is what can bring all that information together to give you the business intelligence that you need. Natalie, the System Unifier app is actually one of those problems you really enjoy solving, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It's a unique challenge to come up with a solution that incorporates the look and feel of multiple applications to bring a feeling of familiarity that makes the new app feel natural to the users.
But even with that, we've talked about build, we've talked about buy, we've talked about hybrid, but there's also a fourth option a lot of people don't really like to talk about. And for me, it's one that I call just live with it. Going back to that discussion on ROI, sometimes the problem that you have is one that's just not worth solving. I had an example when I worked in defense. when we did our testing. There was a process to take all of our testing results and bring it together in like a unified summary. And it was a hacky way we did it. It was an Access database. Yes, Access database shows how old I am. That you had to manually execute like 12 macros and then it assembled all the data. And it stunk, but it only took 5 minutes to do, and we only had to do it twice a year. So it wasn't a problem we're solving, but someone really didn't like it. So they spent 40 hours writing a custom code solution to try to automate this process. And then they didn't tell me about it till they were done. And I looked at them and I did the math and said, great, the return on investment here, our payback period is 240 years. Yeah, this never should have been done. You just got to live with it. Something else has to be the driving factor to make you want to change this. Alrighty. Natalie, we've talked about some good stuff here. I want to know, what do our listeners need to remember the most about the build versus buy decision?
Oh, I think the biggest thing to remember is there's not a one size fits all answer. The right choice depends on your business, the problem you're solving, and what matters to you long term. At Moser, our role is to help you evaluate those factors and guide you to the best decision. And just because we build custom software doesn't mean that's always what we recommend. And to have a good example of this, several months ago, a client wanted us to build a custom app because their competitors had something similar. When I reviewed the competitor site, I noticed it was hosted on a subdomain, which light bulb suggested to me that it was a third-party platform. And after doing a little research, I found they were using a SaaS solution that was way more cost-effective. So when we presented our custom build estimate, I also showed them the third party option and explained that it would take 10 to 15 years to justify the custom build from a financial standpoint. They did end up going with the off the shelf solution, and I think it was the right decision. So we didn't end up winning the project revenue, but we earned something more important, and that's trust. So at the end of the day, I think we want to be a trusted advisor and help our clients choose the solution that truly makes the most sense for them.
That's such a great point, Natalie. The trusted advisor mindset is something that's really core to how we operate in app dev at Moser Consulting. We believe we're not successful unless we're making you successful. And with that, I'd like to thank you, Natalie, for being on our show today. Yay, this is definitely a great discussion, and I believe this is going to help inform local business leaders about the challenges and considerations that come when you're navigating the decision to build a custom application or buy a license to an existing solution. It's not always cut and dry. The right decision is going to be different for each business and each scenario, making it a complex decision. But Moser Consulting is here to help you with this. We can be your trusted advisor. If you're interested in using our expertise, just reach out to Natalie or myself on LinkedIn. Natalie, you did an amazing job. And I have a pretty good feeling I'll be able to convince you to join me on another episode in the near future.
Probably.
Probably sweet. I'd like to also thank our listeners for joining today for this week's episode of ASCII Anything, presented by Moser Consulting. Be sure to join us next time as we dive deeper into our resident experts and what they're currently working on. Do not forget to share your ideas with us on social media. In the meantime, please remember to give us a rating and subscribe to our feed wherever you get our podcasts. Until then, so long, everybody. Go.